Okay, we won the big signatures.
Good evening, everybody. This is the Rye Town Park Commission meeting of Tuesday, October 18th, 2016. Please rise. Mr. Adams will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Commissioner Julie Killian. Commissioner Dennis Pilla.
Greg Adams for Pillar.
Commissioner Joseph Sack. Commissioner Benedict Salanitro.
Present.
Commissioner Paul Rosenberg. Commissioner Gary Zuckerman.
I'm present. As you can see, we do not have a full board, and at the present time, we do not have a quorum. I've been advised that Commissioner Killian and Commissioner Sack will not be here this evening, and Matt Cunningham, former council person from the City of Rye and former Rye Town Park Commissioner, will be sitting here in place of Mr. Sack. However, he is on his way. As you can see, Trustee Greg Adams is here in place of Mayor Pilla, and Mr. Mayor Rosenberg has an emergency public hearing with his entire board in Rybrook, and he will not be attending. This meeting is open for informational purposes only. We cannot take any votes. However, we can proceed with informational matters. Item number 3, the adoption of minutes, because very few of I think only Benny and I will be here who were at either of the 2 meetings slated for minutes adoption. So there will be no vote taken on the adoption of minutes this evening. I'd like to open with public comment on non-agenda items. If anybody would like to comment on non-agenda items, please come to the podium, state your name, address, and affiliation.
Hi, I'm Ann Muller. I live on Rye Beach Avenue across from the park. This is a non-agenda item, but it's been on the agenda many years. So the summer is over, the beach is closed, the park is still open, and I'm wondering what's the deal with the dogs now? Because they are in the park all day, not just till 9 off leash, but 2 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 6 o'clock. And I know, or I understand that there is security of some sort, but I'm not sure where you all are gonna go with that.
Thank you.
That's my question.
Thank you.
You're
Debbie,
welcome.
do you?
The rules have not changed. This is the first I've heard that the dogs are out unleashed at all hours, and we will take it up we have security. We have 2 shifts of security, certainly all day and until midnight. So we'll take care of it. Thank you. I would add that in addition to security, that enforcement is the Rye Police, and we're more than happy to communicate with them if that's not happening either.
The park management report. By the way, is there anybody else who wishes to speak on non-agenda items? I only saw one hand. Okay, next item, park management report.
Gary, the Angelman Walkathon is
Well, it's a request for approval.
right.
Terry?
Hi. As you all know, our official season ended September 30th, and like Debbie said, with the exception of a security guard day and night and a few maintenance workers, there really isn't anyone at the park. I wanted to thank my senior staff for making this season successful, and all that came to the park for them to enjoy. I also want to thank the commission for giving me the opportunity to accept the challenge for running the park and achieving the goals that were set by them. The triathlon was held the weekend of the 24th and 25th. Security was utmost important for this event due to the events that happened the week prior in the city. We worked in conjunction with Playland, the City of Rye Police, the Westchester County Police Department, and the Triathlon Committee on plans on how we could make both parks safe and secure, and we did accomplish that. As far as finances go, for month to month from September 2016 versus September 15, we actually we're behind 36,417 when you do the variance between the two. Year to date from April 16th through September 30th for both the 2016 and 2015, we're ahead 68,308. As you can see, our units are way down from last year. Parking down 1,279, and the beach 2,514 for the month of September. And then permits were actually ahead by 349 year to date. Parking was down 4,226, and the beach 4,902. Maintenance has pretty much closed down the park. Everything is winterized. There's really no water running except for in the main bathrooms. They've been now working on some indoor painting with 2 of the maintenance staff still there. We felt that if they could get the painting done right now, it would help come April when we're busy trying to do other things to get the park ready to open. As far as the water, everything in the pond was shut down as well as the fountain. And Lenny, who installed the fountain, offered that he was going to plant some bushes at no charge so that you wouldn't see the electrical outlet. Bill has been working with trying to get volunteers to come and do monthly cleanups, and he's been working with Russ Gold on that. And we're also trying to work with West Ham to get a few volunteers to come work with Sal and Paul, who are there working on some painting projects. As far as security, they're still on staff. They're going to be cleaning the bathrooms and keeping them once Sal and Paul leave and keeping them clean. We made sure that there were supplies so that they could get to them. As far as personnel, we did have our final senior staff meeting on September 17th. We discussed what went well and what didn't, and what we can do to make things better. We also discussed items that we felt were needed for next season so that we can put a list together and have that ready when we begin our budget process. As always, Debbie Reisner was in attendance, and Gary also came to thank everyone for doing a really good job for the season, and listened to our discussions. After that meeting, I also met with the City of Rye manager, Marcus Serrano, and the employees of the City of Rye's Park and Recreation Department to discuss the season and what some of our ideas for improvement were for the season. As far as things going on at the park, we had 2 photo shoots happen. There's a program for stroller fitness that started on Monday. We have had 3 classes from Milton School go in conjunction with the Rye Nature Center. Soul Riders decorated the trees and branches for the ribbons to promote breast cancer awareness. On the 19th of November, we're having a 5K race in conjunction with the New York Rangers in Playland. On the 26th, the City of Rye is having their annual turkey run that will go through the park. We have received requests, as you know, from Angelman to do their walk again in May. We have updated our website, which I think still needs to be a little bit more updated, more on a more kind of at a loss for words there, on a more updated basis. And signs for the off-season are in place.
Thank you. Any questions from the commissioners?
Great job, Terry. Terry, you have any comment on the dogs?
Honestly, Benny, I've been away for 2 weeks.
Congratulations. Well deserved.
And
No comment
I came
this
back Monday. I stopped by yesterday, but it was later than the dogs. I
Okay.
know security's there, so I'm just going to have to get in touch with them and find out what's going on.
Thanks.
I do plan on stopping at the park every day, though.
Appreciate it, Terry.
Okay.
Thank you, Terry. Terry, one quick question. What do you forecast, if you know, what revenue might be coming in from events between now and the end of the year? I know
yeah.
we have continuing expenses. I'm just wondering if there's anything
As
balancing.
far as any kind of income, the only thing that we'll be getting is from, the events that are going on. I don't know what has been worked out with Rye for the turkey run. And I do believe we're going to be getting some income from the Rangers.
All right, great.
Other than that, I know Pearl River is coming tomorrow. They're doing, they want to come do marine projects, but we haven't been charging them. So other than those two incomes, I believe there will not be.
All right, thank you. Bill, you had something on that.
Terry's right, there isn't any major income to come in now, but we are getting a small amount of money. There's the High Performance Track Club pays $25 a session, and they have Monday and Wednesday sessions through nearly the end of November. And if we have, and the kids, the stroller fitness program is going to be generating a couple $100. So, and what we've worked out with the Rangers is for them to be able to use our park to come through it and have things set up, and a water stop is going to be $500 for us. That's an event that starts setting up at 6 in the morning and goes till 1 in the afternoon. So there's a lot of time that we're involved with.
All right, thank you, Bill. Matt, come join us. You can sit next to me, it's okay. Either side, your choice. Mr. Matt Cunningham has joined us, representing Mayor Sack, and we now have a quorum. Since we only have 4 members, all votes must be unanimous, meaning, hate to grant this power to anybody, but everybody on the board has a veto. So we will continue. Let's go back to the Engelman Walkathon request, and then we'll do the Chamber of Commerce request. Is anybody here from Engelman?
I don't think so.
Bill, do you want to take us through this? Because I think this is something that's been done before.
Yes, unless people have a lot of questions, and for people who aren't that familiar, we have a number of health-related organizations that have found the facilities at Rytown Park very good for these walkathons. It's got a beautiful setting. You've got the nice beach path that runs from the south to the north, and frequently, they're able to use Playland as part of their event. So, the Angelman Foundation is one of the more recent ones. We have 2 others who have been doing it every year. Plus, we have the Polar Plunge that happens on January 1st. And we're constantly getting requests, some of which, don't work out, but, we know that a lot of times these groups like the Leukemia Foundation, they generate publicity, and it's good PR for the park, I think. In the case of the Angelman Foundation, they had a small group. It was a modest fee that we charged, basically, and they were very happy with it. In your packets, you got a letter from them as to their request to do it again. And although it seems like a long way away, these groups, they need to lock in the dates because frequently they're part of a national event. So they want to be able to make sure that they're able to do it on a specific day. So I know it's a little tough for Terry and the staff to think about that far ahead, but we can do that. It's not a problem. We just want to make sure that whatever we do in the fall gets put into the spring calendar so that we are aware of those things.
Thank you. I don't think we need a formal resolution approving. Is there anybody opposed to Engelmann? Is it, how to say, Engelmann or Angelman?
Angelman is
Angelman.
the way I take it.
Okay. So without any objection, thank you
Okay,
very much
so we'll
for
move
that.
forward on that.
Is anybody here from the Chamber of Commerce?
Bill's going to make that presentation.
I'll
Then
do that
Bill-
also.
Okay, then Bill, you're the Chamber of Commerce.
Yes,
Please make
we
your
actually belong to the Chamber of Commerce. The
Yeah, I know.
Rye-Town Park Commission is a member, and we are also a member of the Portchester, Rye Brook, Town of Rye Chamber of Commerce. And we joined those institutions a number of years ago, realizing that we wanted to have, much better communication with the business and nonprofit communities, because those are major stakeholders in the success of Rye-Town Park. So we joined. In the past, we sort of divided up as to, I do the Rye ones and somebody else would do the Portchester one. And we can work on that however we want to for next year. But one of the things that happens every year at this time is that we get a request to donate a season permit, a family season permit, to the chamber itself in its own efforts to raise money. In the case of the Rye Chamber of Commerce, it has to do with an event called Mistletoe Magic, which is the Sunday after Thanksgiving. It brings in thousands of people. So it's just a nice little thing that we can do, and all the money goes to the scholarship fund of the high school that the chamber runs. And I understand that the Portchester, Rye Brook, and Rye Town Chamber of Commerce they use theirs in a similar way to generate funds through either an auction item or a raffle. And you have in your packets a sample of last year's.
Page 15 and 16.
15, yes. Looks like that, only I think the original was in color. And it just basically says, here's the raffle prize, and people buy raffle tickets, and it's a good way to generate some income and a lot of publicity that we get. And I think it also ties into our involvement with the chambers of commerce. So I know that the commission last year actually approved giving them a platinum, upgrading the level of the permit, because we have the normal family permit, which is $150, and then we have the platinum permit, which for a small fee of $300, you can get unlimited free parking, which is, for some people, that's a big thing. So if we can go for the 300, that would be great.
I think whatever we did last year, unless
Yeah.
there's a recommendation to change it, I think
No,
it would
keep
be
it the same.
appropriate.
Yeah.
All right, any objection by any of the commissioners?
No.
Good, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bill.
Bill, where do you have that? You have it down at the Square House? Where do you guys usually set up, or how do you petition that?
You mean for the mistletoe magic?
Yeah.
Oh, it's all over. It
Okay.
includes everything.
But you're there a day of?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a member of the council of the Chamber of Commerce, so I'm the person who does it, and I attend their monthly meetings. We have frequently the city manager will come, or we'll get reports from the police, because the business community there's all the businesses on Purchase Street, and then the areas out by where we live, out by Milton area. And it's a good opportunity for networking. We find out what stores are coming in.
Right.
Sometimes, and obviously one of the reasons we join is to hopefully make a partnership with some of these businesses who will help support our activities at the park. So,
Thank you.
yeah. And if you haven't ever been to Mistletoe Magic, it's open to everybody. And they have pony rides, they have train rides. I mean, it's just the whole downtown of Rye is turned into Mistletoe Magic.
And the park.
Yes.
And the park. All right. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it. I like that ringtone. For Elise, I believe. We're going to skip now. We're going to skip the capstone presentation. We'll save that because Acting Commissioner Adams has to leave by 7 o'clock. And we have one item that consists of two parts that may result in a vote. So we're going to go to number 9. We're going to have a discussion and possible resolution regarding a new restaurant RFP and a possible extension of the license agreement with Seaside Johnny's. There are two separate resolutions. As most everybody's aware, we only had two bidders on the last RFP, and it was the sense of the commission that it should be rebid. So the first resolution before us is a resolution to rebid with a slight difference. With the aid of a consultant, the resolution contains a proposal to retain a consultant specializing in drafting RFPs for restaurant operations on municipal property. I'd like a motion and a second, and then we will have discussion on this matter.
Make a motion?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion. Would anybody like to further discuss this matter?
Excuse the background on this, but I understand, the last exercise did not develop the competition that the commission was looking for. So I think this initiative is something that should take place, but I would be more interested in finding out if there's going to be a timeline associated with hiring, developing what the turnaround might be as far as getting information in front of the commission so they have the opportunity to interview, the public has a chance to interview. So I'd be more interested in, yes, hiring that individual or individuals, but at the same time, is there going to be a timeline associated with a motion to approve whoever that RFP is going to be put in front of? So that would be my time clock that I'd be interested to hear.
No, not yet, please. The proposal, and actually I had a telephone discussion with Mayor Sack very briefly today about it. The resolution enables us to go forward. We would choose first a restaurant consultant. That may require going out for an RFP to get a consultant, at which point the consultant, once chosen, would further develop the RFP for the restaurant. And I'm not sure what the timeline would be, but I would suggest that this would be done as soon as possible, and that we would formulate the initial RFP, unless council can advise that this is a professional service and that we need not go through the RFP process, but could solicit bids from qualified consultants. Paul, do you have any idea about that?
Well, yeah, you could do it that way. I mean, you could do it, I think that you could do an RFQ, request for qualifications for consultants to start with. If you're, I mean, I know that the city had someone that they used and they were pleased with him or her. So because it's a professional service, you don't have to bid it per se. I mean, you can solicit a proposal from that individual and see. But I mean, if a constituent member of the commission had a good experience with a particular consultant, you're well within your rights to use that.
I have no problem if the city of Rye is satisfied with the performance of the consultant that the city used for, I guess it's for Whitby Castle. I have no problem in taking that recommendation from the city of Rye and going forward and hiring that person as a consultant. I don't have any personal experience in hiring restaurant consultants, so either we would do, I said RFP, but actually it would be an RFQ for qualifications for such consultant, and we would go forward on that basis, and hopefully we'd get that process going within the next 2 weeks. So that is what I think the timeline would be. And hopefully we would choose a consultant before the end of the year. I don't know how long that process would take, but we're dealing with hopefully at the December meeting, which is slightly less than, I would guess, is 2 months away. And we'd have to obviously interview, et cetera, which may require the calling of a special meeting and having an executive session to do that.
Yeah, and Mac, I think the discussion is, there's two components to the consultant in terms of task. One is to develop the RFP that will go out for restaurateurs to bid on. So he would, look at that, look at the details of that, and then also the legal component of it in terms of getting into the license agreement that we're working with our counsel on that as well. So there's two parts. There's the
No, I realize that. I was just getting back to what Gary was interested in, because obviously you gotta put the first step forward.
Absolutely.
And that's obviously the consultant.
right.
To Paul's comment, there may be some other ones that people have relationships with that would be more than qualified as far as professional service is concerned. I'm only qualified by saying that the one, just for the public's transparency, that I'm on the Rye Golf Commission, and we went through an exercise of opening up our business to the Whitby Castle, and we were introduced to a gentleman who walked us through the process. He knows the industry, knows what that business can generate, who would be interested in it, and that's the same thing that we're
Right.
looking for
Absolutely.
as far as the opportunity down at Rye Town Park. So he will, that person, or whoever the decision is made by the commission, can kind of tell you, this is really what the generation of business is going to qualify, and John has been it for forever, but there may be some other people that the commission is interested in, and that person will kind of tell you, all right, this is what we think the basket will hold, and I think that's what the commission is looking for, is
Yeah.
some sort of guidance. And again, I'm only echoing what we went through as far as a body. We're not in that business, and we don't pretend to know that business, but we were looking out for that point for the membership. But at the same time, as this body's looking for the taxpayers, the city of Rye, and also the Rye Town. So we look, and obviously for the quality of life at Rye Town. So I urge, the commission to adopt.
Excuse me, sir.
Can I just finish, and then I'll.
It's been about 10 minutes, so we're ready to have the public speak now.
No, we're not. Please sit down. Please sit down, sir. Please sit down. Thank you.
So again,
Mr. Cunningham.
going back to what Gary was saying, that's part and parcel of this discussion we're having right now as far as getting the guidance and the expertise. And again, it's a decision up to the commission whether this person is qualified or not, but I think that's something that has to be
Well,
worked.
What was the, in your experience, because, it's first for me, is there a limit, or is it unlimited in terms of the professionals that are out there that would be able to assist us? Was it kind of, just from your own experience, having gone through it?
Well, I think the question really comes up is really the issue of dealing with municipalities. That is obviously more defined versus a commercial, and obviously something that's more underdefined of franchisees. So, again, I'm only speaking for what, from a municipality perspective, this person was able to kind of gather the information we were seeking.
Okay.
I think that, as a first step, I certainly have no problem in approaching and asking Mr. Serrano to approach this person or firm and seek their input, and if the commissioners so desire, to retain this person. As I say, I don't have, I don't have any dog in this fight. I'd like to get a qualified consultant who can aid us in putting out a proper RFP for the restaurant. And of course, that consultant will work with the commissioners and hopefully members of the public as well to determine what the parameters would be, which would also include a mechanism for determining which is the best qualified applicant if we are fortunate to have more than one. So,
It's a neutral party, basically. We're looking for a
neutral party. And there may be people who we may decide after further discussion, the other commissioners, Mayor Sack is not here, Councilwoman Killian, Mayor Pilla, and Mayor Rosenberg, although two of them are represented, they may have individual views as to the process by which we're going to choose the consultant, which is the first step. So that's what the first resolution will provide. Now, this gentleman wishes to speak.
Gary, just one quick thing. Just from a process, I think there might be some confusion from the public how we operate on the Roberts rules, because we shouldn't have this. There was a motion, there was a second. There's no vote on that. The discussion is after the second. That's what we're having a discussion. The public is entitled to speak, but the public must, you know, wait for its turn. So I would appreciate no interruptions while we try to make this thing move forward.
I guess from a public's perception.
Sir, would you start with your name and address, please?
Sean Doherty, 20 Redfield Street, Rye,
Thank
New
you.
York. Sir, the gentleman to your left, your name and your addresses,
To my right.
Matt Cunningham?
and you live in Rye?
Yes, sir.
And I guess the question becomes, how are you qualified to speak on behalf of Mayor Sack or Representative Killian?
Well, they can appoint, and I'll let the chairman kind of echo that, but any representative from,
let me
go ahead.
finish.
But let me just, my qualifications is, I was
gonna
on the
come
Rye
back.
Town Park
Yeah.
Commission.
Yeah, that's good.
I was on the city council. I've been a resident of Rye for over 40 years. Let me finish, all right? So I have the background as far as Rye Town Park.
Sure.
I was asked to come tonight because of this particular agenda item.
By who? By who?
Mayor Sack, who had a conflict.
Sure. No, you're not done. Keep going.
I am done.
Your credentials, you weren't on with your credentials.
I gave you my credentials.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes, sir.
it is the practice of this commission that when a full member of the commission is not present,
Okay.
that commissioner may appoint, especially the mayors, may appoint a substitute for that meeting.
Got it.
Mr. Adams is sitting in place of Mayor Pilla. Mr. Cunningham is sitting in place of Mayor Sack, and this has been our practice, as far as I know, for years. And
How many years has that been the
Mr.
practice?
Doherty, Mr. Cunningham is fully qualified and maybe more
It's not-
qualified
The
than.
question is, how many years has that been the practice? How
Probably
many years?
100 years.
100 years? Really?
Well, we started in 1907.
You look pretty young to me.
I'm not that old yet, but I've
Mr. Doherty,
been
do you
around
have
for
a
a while.
point?
But if you,
Mr. Doherty, we're trying to conduct business here.
We
Do you
are.
have a point?
We do. The question is, how are you qualified to represent the
We-
people of Rye when you have not
The,
been?
on the agenda is not the qualifications of Mr. Cunningham. On the agenda is the question of a resolution to appoint a consultant to do an RFP for the restaurant. Do you have a point regarding that?
We do.
Please state it.
We'd like to have the consultant be put in front of the council so that they themselves are meaningfully qualified to be paid by the council,
Which council?
your council,
This is
you
a
mean the
commission.
Okay.
your commission.
Thank you. Point noted. Thank you. Are there any other comments on this particular resolution? If not, we have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Is it a motion or a second for the resolution
For the-
itself?
For the
Is
resolution.
it the same one as
This-
before?
We only
There's a
have one
vote on-
resolution.
It's been moved and seconded, so he's calling for the roll
Got it.
call vote.
Commissioner Salanicho?
Yes.
Commissioner Adams?
Yes.
Commissioner Zuckerman?
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham?
Appointed. Yes,
Thank you. Appointed? Tell me how do you say?
that's
No,
fine.
he gets the vote. It's okay.
Thank you. The motion passes. We have a second resolution. This resolution is to extend the license for Seaside Johnny's for a period not to exceed 2 years, commencing January 1st, 2017, and giving the president of the commission, which is me, the authority to commence negotiations with Starfish Grill, which is the official name of Seaside Johnny's, for an extension not to exceed 2 years, and that the Rye Town Park Commission must approve the terms and conditions of any such extension. May I have a motion and a second, and then we'll have discussion.
Motion.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion. Just by way of transparency, both Mayor Sack and Councilwoman Commissioner Killian have advised by email that they are in favor of only a 1-year extension, not a 2-year. The resolution provides not to exceed 2 years, which of course could include 8 months, 12 months, 15 months, 18 months, or 2 years, but not to exceed 2 years. That's what the resolution provides. Further discussion, please?
I think it goes hand in hand with the first discussion we had on the resolution relative to how long it's going to take for us to get through the RFP process. And somehow this should be linked with that. In other words, if we're successful and get a timely resolution of a RFP that goes out for restaurateurs, and we can meet with the public to vet those proposals, we may find ourselves in a position to have a new restaurateur before the 1 year is expired, which means that we may have the opportunity to have a new user, in writing before the expiration of 12/31/17. But that's an unknown. We don't know that. So, while I appreciate the 1 year limit, which I'm in favor of myself, I don't think, the current language prohibits us from the 1 year limit. In other words, it's not to exceed 2 years. It all depends on the first part of this process is the consultant, the RFP, and getting more vendors, if you will, more restaurateurs in place. So I think one has to go hand in hand with the other.
Greg, any comment?
No.
Mac?
And do
Representing-
reference, all
representing
reference of
Mayor
Mr. Adams. I
Sack.
know he has to leave in 5 minutes, so I'll make my comments brief. One of the things that I have concerns about, obviously, is the longer a decision is made, there's always a risk that the general economy will go soft. And therefore, your competition may not be there that as early as it may be as 1 year. So that's why, going back to my earlier comments, I think the urgency of getting this consultant so you guys can make an intelligent decision relative to the timeline you're associated with. If I was on the other side of the table in negotiation with this, I don't believe that I would want to know that I may be out in 18 months, I may be out in 15 months, I may be out in 24 months. I don't know. I can't speak for the other side who's involved in this, but I'd be concerned, obviously, from a negotiation perspective. The fact is, they have this unknown. I think if you define something clearly, then obviously he knows the timeline. He has personnel, he has labor, he has provisions he has to order. So I'm only speaking the fact that anything when the contract is an uncertainty, that obviously introduces another gray area for the commission. So I want to say, again, the comments made by Councilwoman Killian and Mayor Sack are public now, but my own concerns here of the urgency to get this done has multiple legs on it, and I think we should be held to a 1 year obligation, so it obviously makes this a priority for the commission.
Well, I don't have any problem making this a priority. Would you be in favor of striking the extension time and leaving it blank? In other words, authorize to commence negotiations with Starfish Grill for an extension period? Or would you insist on putting in the term of 1 year?
Well, I guess the question I need to know for myself is the contract is up December 31st? Is that right?
That is correct. So in other words, we need to enter into something in the next 2 months. So that,
No, I understand that. So
Yeah.
from a perspective of again, a negotiation, and again, this is something that's done in public as far as transparency. If there's a decision to go 2 years at some point like that, I think whoever the decision is, you probably want to move the clock up on the second term earlier so you have a time to basically to turn that establishment around to allow the next vendor. You heard the last meeting in August that the time clock was too short for the other vendor. So again, from a transparency perspective, the longer you go out on this, and unless you put some sort of firm dates in this, it kind of puts you in a bind as far as what the next steps may be after 18 months, after 24 months.
what is your suggestion as, should
No.
there be an amendment to this? We have a resolution before us, and I think we have a commitment on the part of all of us to do this as quickly as possible. Is it your suggestion that you would amend this motion in any way? And if so, you know, it's,
No, again, when I walked in, I apologize for being late. Apparently, it requires a 4-0 vote. Correct me if I'm correct on this.
that is correct.
So, again, I'll go back to my opening statement that I would say a 1 year is all I would be obligated to, I would commit to as far as, again, the multiple steps that we have to take, the commission has to take here to make a decision that's best for the long-term interest, and not only, obviously, from the other side of the party here, that they know exactly the timeline, because again, if you go out 15, 18, 24 months, there's uncertainty there. So again, just to repeat myself, 1 year is where I think it ought to be held to.
The other commissioners, obviously, Mr. Cunningham will vote against the resolution as proposed. So do the other commissioners wish to amend it to put in 1 year, or withdraw the motion and vote with, hopefully with a full board at the next meeting?
I would have no problem amending the resolution. The thing is, obviously, it's the impetus is to get the ball
Yeah.
rolling.
Well, we
with
hope
the-
to
with the whole
do that.
proposal and everything else.
And my hope is that we could do an RFP fairly quickly and choose, and that choice might again be Mr. Ambrose.
Yeah, no
You know,
question.
he may be the only bidder again.
Yeah.
We don't know that.
Yeah.
But obviously, the 2 years gives us more time, but the 1 year puts a limit and indicates the urgency of, you know, of the task that we're about to embark on. Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Hi, Sherry Jordan, 15 Coolidge Avenue, Rye, New York. Mr. Cunningham, when you did the work with the restaurant consultant for Whitby Castle, how long did that process take?
Well, we had multiple bidders, and so there was a multiple interview process. And again, the commission is just an advisory group, so we made our advisement to the city council, who had to formally adopt it. So we went through the process with a working group of members, commission, and there's actually 2 council liaisons to kind of move the process forward. So to answer your questions, we went through 3 finalists. We had multiple applicants.
Was that just for the consultant, or was that
No,
for
no,
the?
no, no.
oh.
You asked the question from the restaurateur's perspective. We went through 3, and we actually went to site visits and things like that. So to answer your question, it was a 90-day process because, again, we wanted to move the process forward as far as getting it done by the time spring came around. So we were in a transition similar to what we'll go through here, where you have a down period. Hopefully you get a restaurateur is ready to move in, and therefore they can get their staff in place.
I was actually also curious, though, because you said you used a restaurant consultant who walked you through the process. How long did that process, from when you hired that consultant to when you got bids from qualified restaurants? Because that could just help us give.
Between the start time, as far as the consultant on board, by the time there was a contract signed, obviously you have lawyers involved, and
Yes.
that takes at least probably a third of the time. That probably took close to 5 to 6 months.
All right. I was just kind of curious, since you had done that, if it was from the consultant to actually getting restaurants to bid on it was a 6-month process, or it took a year, but it sounds like it took what I would consider a reasonable amount of time for them to come up with other restaurateurs to bid on it.
And obviously, what we went through is, it's a 12-month operation there, and
Right.
unless that changes the model down here, the Wright-Town Park is a little bit different as far as the way it currently is. That doesn't mean it's not going to change, so we were more focused on the fact that this was going to be a 12-month operation.
Okay, thank you.
And I think that you raise a good point, Mac, that we don't know if any other bidder will ask for a 12-month operation or not. You know, Mr. Ambrose has been operating the establishment for many years, and under his business model, he obviously feels that a 12-month operation will not be successful. It remains to be seen, and I would think that the restaurant consultant, after looking at the operation, will make a determination as to how the RFP would be formed in determining whether we would ask for a 12-month operation or give the potential bidder the opportunity to decide on a 12-month or a 9-month operation. But that would be up to the consultant to recommend. Yes, sir.
Those are all,
Are you still Mr. Doherty?
I'm the
Okay.
same man, I'm sorry to say. Those are all valid qualifications. Mr. Cunningham, I think, is a valid member on the staff. What I would say is that I would caution around what we categorize as a consultant. What I would say is that people that own restaurants and run restaurants and pay their mortgages based on restaurant revenue are the people that we should probably focus on more, as opposed to people that are just restaurant consultants, that are just sort of people that we call into this thing. I think Mr. Cunningham has a good point. I think that most of these respondents fully agree that we have been fooled into the paradigm that we can't operate a restaurant at Seaside Johnny's for 12 months, because every single resident that I know, and I've actually talked to more since, sir, you've pressed me to have that canvas, we've always been focused on the fact that that spot is truly a gem on the East Coast. And I know you don't live in that area, but we do. So I think that we are more positioned to opine on what's actually appropriate and what can actually generate revenue. And based on that, I think that every single resident that I know, and I'm a taxpayer in Rye, we all believe that everyone will frequent a year-round, 12-month restaurant in that venue. And I would add to that that Mr. Liberatore from the other place called Half Moon across the river has ventured to say that he will be likely to submit a new bid if the commission will allow it, and he would like to submit a 12-month bid to have a year-round restaurant. So I would offer that the notion that we cannot have a year-round restaurant at Seaside Johnny's is absolute fiction. And I want to say that again, absolute fiction. You'll cough, and I'll say it again. Absolute
Thank you.
fiction. I'm
Thank
not
you.
done. I'm not done, sir. You don't live in Rye. You don't know the traffic that comes into Seaside Johnny's. We do. We have strollers and children and people that walk their children in the park. We do not like the people that come to that Seaside Johnny's location. What we want is a paradigm of people who have money to spend to get toward the county and get toward people that actually have a dog in the fight. You've said before you don't have a dog in the fight. We do.
You don't have,
We do. So
I said I don't have a dog in the fight when it comes to choosing a consultant.
you don't have a dog in the fight because you don't live within 10 miles of the Rye Town Park. We do.
Actually, I do. And if you'll excuse me, I think that your tone is rather acerbic, and I don't think it's required here. If you'd like to make,
I actually think it is, sir. I think it is. The amount of inactivity demonstrated by this commission is outrageous. So yes, it is. It is.
Yep. Thank you for your comments.
You're welcome. You'll have more. You'll have more of these as this process goes forward.
So there's,
I'm going to take a vote.
so I'm
Excuse
going
me.
to,
Would you, is
rescind
there a
my prior
motion?
motion?
Is there a motion to amend, to provide that the extent shall not exceed 1 year in each place?
I will amend my previous motion to include a one-year provision.
Is there, all in favor of the?
Second?
Second.
Second?
Can you read that back again, Dan?
It's the same resolution.
Not to exceed.
Not to exceed 1 year.
Second.
Mr. Cunningham seconds.
Any comments from
May
the
I have
public?
a roll call, please?
Comments from the public?
We just had comments from the public.
coming. Commissioner Selenitro,
Yes.
Acting Commissioner Adams,
Yes.
Commissioner Zuckerman,
Yes.
Acting Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes.
Under the, further, no, go ahead.
For the completion of the people's, you are approving what?
This is for the permission to enter into negotiations with the current licensee for a proposal. That, we haven't even started yet. So that, if there is an agreement for the one-year extension, this just grants permission for us to communicate with the current licensee.
Thank you.
That's all it does.
Thank you.
Also, on a further note from, go ahead, you can sit. No,
Thank you.
that's not, I have just making a statement, you don't have to stand up for that. In order for the process, because there was a lot of discussion about, getting the public involved, and there's been communication back and forth from members of the public to the commission regarding wanting to have a voice, and they should. We should, at some point early in the game, when we get into making some decisions on consultants, et cetera, I would recommend that we have some sort of a steering committee that has members of the public at large who would be able to assist us in vetting proposals, et cetera, et cetera. And I think we've done that
Yeah,
collaboratively in the
we had
past as
that,
well.
we had that before, and I think that would be a recommendation that the consultant would possibly insert in the RFP proposal. And if it's not in the RFP, we can do it outside of the RFP in terms of how we choose the ultimate bidder from the proposers. I know that you have your hand up. Mr. Ambrose.
Good evening, John Ambrose from Seaside Johnny's, as you might well guess by this point in time. I don't know where to start, but you got to start somewhere. Relative to the situation, initially the lease was going to be for 10 years plus options and whatnot. I understand that's off the table. And anyhow, the subject of a short-term lease, in as much as it's not the most attractive option to us, we'd be prepared to be flexible. Flexible to a point. What does that mean? 1 year will not be acceptable. We'd be happy with 3. We'll settle for 2. And that's our standpoint. And anyhow, one of the biggest things in my heart of hearts, as a human being, a man, a prideful Rye resident, et cetera, is for all the years that we're there, 17 years and counting, I think we've put a good product out there for the masses. There's been a lot of studies done on how many people from Rye go to the restaurant and go to the park, how many people from out of town go to the park and the restaurant. And anyhow, it is staggering to a certain degree that perhaps 85% of the people that do come to the park are non-residents. And that's because a lot of the people from Rye go to the country clubs. And I'm very prideful, in conjunction with my partner, that for 17 years we've been conducting the blue-collar country club of Rye. And anyhow, to my final days, I'll go down with that sentiment because we are a restaurant for the people and for all the people, with no exclusions. But, and anyhow, reading this little ditty about, people in favor of the restaurant, not in favor, it's gratifying to me that I think there's a better response for people who are pro. And as I always like to say, if you put 100 people in a room, and that room be heaven, there might be 8 or 9 people that wouldn't be happy with the accommodations. So you never know. I'd like to go with the majority, and I think the majority of the people love our spot, continue to love our spot, and will always love our spot. But
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ambrose.
May I?
No, I think that we've had enough
Oh, you
on
do?
this.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll log my comments online for the chamber.
Pardon me? We have a gentleman who wishes to speak.
Hello, my name is Bishop Powell. I am a lifelong resident of Mamaroneck. I do now live in Powell, Wayne Powell, and I now live in North Stamford. But I wanted to come tonight just to express how grateful I am for the privilege to, first of all, know John Ambrose, but also for 17 years and maybe 13 years prior to that, when the restaurant was the Crab Shanty in Mamaroneck, that we had some of the greatest experiences we've ever had as a family, as a church, as business people in his restaurant. And we developed a tremendous relationship where basically my wife and I, we know the name of every probably employee that works in there because that's one of our favorite spots to eat. I would say this, that, I mean, the world is changing. And the idea that there are certain people that should be excluded from something like that is just not, it's not right. The beauty of that beach, to go there and sit by the water, because the water is one of my favorite places to be, and just to have that experience is something that most people don't get to do. But John opened it up to us many years ago when he would come to the church and cater our love feast, and he would bring all the food. He didn't know at the time he was really advertising. But so many people enjoyed the food, and they would always ask me, where is that? You know, and I would say, well, it was a Crab Shanty at the time, but I said it's Seaside Johnny's. And more people from every walk of life, Rabbi Jeffrey Serkman, who's the rabbi at Larchmont Temple, he and I go there often just to have meetings because it's just a great spot to just relax and enjoy. I take all of my kids there just about every Sunday after church because it's basically our tradition after service to go have a meal. And they always want to go to Seaside Johnny's and want to have the most expensive thing on the menu, the king crab legs. But one of the things that I think is important is this, that if something's been working for 17 years, that says a lot about that something. And I think that I've only seen it get better and better each year. I think he has a gift in terms of selecting the people that work there because everybody there treats people with respect, with dignity, and I've never been disappointed when I've gone there. So I just want to say that there are thousands of people that I basically represent because there are so many churches and so many synagogues and houses of worship that basically on a Sunday will bring their family there just to have a wonderful experience and maybe discuss the lessons of that service. My wife and I, we're there at least 2 or 3 times a week. We both work, and so it's a nice place just to relax and settle. And then we can bring people there to see the fireworks, which I think now on Friday. But I'm saying all that to say this. There will always be people that, you know, really are never going to be satisfied. And I think we have to really understand that this is not just a restaurant, but so many families go there. I've never seen so many families there. And, you know, people celebrate Mother's Day, Father's Day. I mean, there's great things that happen there, and I think it would be a tragedy to lose Seaside Johnny's. And as I said before, my dad used to say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And so I think we should just do our best to make sure it continues, because I don't want to have to go too far to eat that king crab leg.
Thank you, Mr. Powell. Mr. Doherty?
Yes, sir. Sir, may I ask you, do you know how many town residents there are in Rye? You directly, sir.
Town?
Town or city?
Pardon?
How many do you think there are?
There are approximately 45,000 residents of the town
And how many-
15,000 residents of the city.
That's about right. How many people do you think actually frequent Seaside Johnny's in your best guess?
I would say a number, because they're crowded often.
If
Mr.
you had to,
Ambrose
if
would
you
know better
had,
than
if
I.
you had to guess, would you guess that most of the people that pay taxes in Rye and pay for the roads and the sewers and the parking in the town of Rye, do you think they go to Seaside Johnny's?
That's totally irrelevant.
It's not.
No, yes, it is.
I'm confused
And-
by the question. Are you saying the town of Rye or
It's
the
a very.
city of Rye?
Let me make the question more. Let me make it more
Mr. Doherty,
specific.
Mr. Doherty.
Hold
Mr.
on.
No, no,
The
you
attorney
hold
asked a
on.
question.
I am not, hold it. I am not going to be interrogated by you. I am not going to be interrogated. Sit down.
No one's asking.
Sit down.
Sir.
Sit down.
Your attorney
Tom,
asked a
call the
question.
police, please. Where's the button?
The attorney asked a question. Would like to answer the question. The attorney asked a question, sir.
I'm a guest here. I mean,
The
he's chairing
answer to the
meeting.
the answer
I
to the
just didn't
question
understand
is
the
the answer to the question is the answer to the question is not very many people. Are you pushing a button?
Yeah.
Is that because you don't have the answer?
I don't need to answer your questions.
You don't
Sit
need to?
down, please.
Okay.
Sit down, please.
We'll have to sit down.
Ms. Jordan. If he gets up again, arrest him.
Just remove him.
Remove him. If he gets up again. Ms. Jordan.
Hi, if I may, I'm actually not going to discuss or dispute what type of restaurant. Part of what you would be negotiating with any restaurant that came in, I'm assuming, is to perhaps change the financial arrangement. And so that part of what would be under consideration would be what kind of monies the town of Rye would, the Rye Town Park would get from this restaurant?
That is correct.
Okay, thank
And that
you.
would be a subject of negotiation.
Correct. I just wanted to make sure that that was part of what is being discussed, and this is not
Absolutely.
just what type of restaurant, but also what kind of money is involved.
All parameters.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gold.
Russ Gold, 7 Hayward Place in Rye. This is just going back to Mr. Cunningham's concern about condensing the time frame, the timeline for for all these things that we have to accomplish. The one thing I guess I just want to say is that I think the 2-year, I respectfully disagree with Mr. Cunningham. I think maybe a 2-year would be a better idea. It certainly would accommodate Mr. Ambrose. And the point I'm trying to make is, the reason I'm trying to make this point is that when this first went out as an RFP, some friends of mine and I had spoken to somebody who's an accomplished and established restaurateur, holds multiple places, and we said, hey, look, this is a great opportunity for a new venue for you guys. And he came and we put it through his office, and in a couple of weeks it came back and said, I'm sorry, we make our decisions 2 years out. And this was something, this was something that we said, see, that sounds really interesting, but we've already made our plans for 2017, and this was in 2015. Just wanted to add.
Well, but that's important to note, because if you fast forward this whole process in your mind, and I have, there's a high probability that regardless of who's in play, that there's going to be a period of time for renovations that may leave us with a beach season without a restaurant. So if you do that, and if we're going out to bid now, and we get proposals that we vet, et cetera, and let's say all things go well, sometime in June, we sit down with a potential user of that facility, and then we go through the process of negotiation. If we get lucky, that vendor would probably want to get in to do renovations in, let's say, a year from now. If that plays out well, those renovations may take you 6 months.
And I'm hearing a lot from everybody say that we would have to get very lucky.
Right,
all
but at the same
And
time,
so-
who's going to commit
so why,
the same thing? Who
Why go
commits?
down the same path that we just went down, where we got a qualified bidder, and then for reasons which from what I understand, was this person said, no, it's just too tight a timeline for me.
Right. And the whole thing about it is that there is a process. There's going to be some time that's going to need to be had. So with the fact that we're going out again, I don't think two prospective users are enough. We should try to get
It
5 or
shouldn't- it
6 or
shouldn't
7.
yeah,
The more the
and it sh-
merrier.
And it shouldn't
And we should
stop
take
us.
our time.
It shouldn't stop us from having our foot on the
Absolutely.
gas and get that, and get the consultant, and
Yeah.
get the RFP out. So the thing is, so we're putting out an RFP that says for the 2018 season.
Right. This is less, well,
Yeah.
it doesn't have
I'm
to be
saying-
18.
Yeah, but what, you know.
But my
you know what
point
I'm
is
saying.
that there's a lessons learned from this whole thing, and I think
Russ.
time is important.
Russ,
Yeah.
the matter is closed for now. We passed a resolution. And you heard Mr. Ambrose's response to that. So as of now, unless he changes his mind, or unless the commission changes its mind next month, because we don't have a quorum, we can't renew this at this point. This matter is over for tonight. Okay? Thank you. Let's move on to the next item, which is the update on the NYU Wagner capstone team. And that, I think, is Debbie.
Yes. So, as many of you know, several months ago, Helen Gates and I drafted an application to NYU Wagner Graduate School of Public Service to have a consulting group of graduate students who study urban planning to work on strategic and operational issues for the park. This is a competitive process. There were, as we learned today, over 100 applications. We were lucky enough to be accepted. We have a team of 4 students.
Excuse me, Debbie, Officer, we're okay now.
Their advisor is a professor of urban planning and also one of the people who worked on Portchester's master plan, with some experience in this area. Bill Lawyer, the assistant park director, and I attended the welcome breakfast, opening breakfast this morning. The capstone team actually came up a week before last for their first site visit. They were welcomed to the park by several of the senior staff and given a tour, and then went back to the town offices and spoke at length with Commissioner Zuckerman and myself, and also Judy Eisenberg, our grant writer. The team is in the process of drafting a clarified scope of work, which we expect at the end of this week. The basic parameters of the project that we discussed, which, by the way, they'll be working on from now until May, is to conduct town hall forums for stakeholders and other kinds of qualitative and quantitative data research on the views of what our stakeholders want for our park. We've asked them to identify best practices for how parks in similar circumstances to ours, in other words, a residential suburban environment, are managed. We've asked them to develop performance metrics and to outline a process framework for how to measure future success. In other words, how do you measure a successful park? What does that look like? And we've asked them to identify and examine and recommend strategies for how we provide both access and serving a social good with also balancing the environmental impact of overuse on the park.
Well,
Thank you.
congratulations for that. I mean, that was great news.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think basically,
Nice job.
basically, I think what we hope to get out of this, at little or no cost, is a study of the park and bringing all the stakeholders in and determining what we think the future of this park would be. And with any luck, if we get our CFA grant, which will enable us for further study, this will be folded into that. And if we get recommendations, for example, for capital improvements that should be done, et cetera, we'll be able to get shovel-ready plans in order and then go out for another round of funding for grants to do the work that the capstone people will help us decide needs to be done. So, all in all, I think this is a really, really, really good thing. Any comments? If not, Sherry, come on.
This is the reason why I came, actually. I really am. Hi, Sherry Jordan. I'm actually here now as the Rye Historical Society, and I was coming to congratulate you. I think it's a wonderful grant to get, and I think that it shows, the commission shows foresight in going for a grant like this and working with people, and I just wanted to congratulate you on that.
Thank you very much.
Great little thing you got here. It's beautiful.
That's
Thank
right.
you.
Why don't we
History.
mention it?
Thank you.
Betty.
Free, and I did tell Debbie that we just finished the tour this past weekend, and if the commission's interested, we'll be more than happy to give you guys a tour too.
Awesome, thank you.
Great, thank you. The last item is our financial
Excuse me,
report. I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah, hi, Chris Meyer, 362 Rye Beach Avenue. And also, congratulations on this capstone. I think it's awesome. And I've been to a couple of these things recently, and one thing that's come up repeatedly is the vision. And I feel like this is exactly what you outlined in those, I believe, 7 questions I read through on the train ride out here. I read through the proposal, and I think it's great. And I think what I hope as we'll get out of this is the vision of the park, what that means for all the stakeholders. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Agreed, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our financial report, we have at least one of our accounting team up here.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi. So I'm going to walk you through, give you a brief overview of the Rye Town Park financials as of September 30th, 2016. So this includes the end of the summer and all of the numbers as of the end of the beach season. So if you look at column 3, the third column in is the actual results as of 9/30/16. You'll see that our revenue came in at $1,154,000, which is about $216,000 over budget when we prorate the budget. And that was primarily due to the weather. So the weather definitely was in our favor. September was a little rougher because, as you I'm sure heard earlier, Labor Day, it rained. And so September, we actually took a step back as it relates to year-to-date revenue, but we're still ahead of budget by about $216,000. We've since closed the park technically, but we still continue to incur expenses. So we've got some maintenance guys and we're cleaning up. We're trying to prepare the park for next year. We've talked to Debbie about doing some painting and some cleanup and refurbishing some areas of the park so that we can get ready for next year. So the expenses through September, which include staff that we had on hand, even though we didn't have the revenue and it was rainy and the park revenue wasn't there. Expenses through September were $842,000. So the net impact for 9 months was $311,906, which is $187,000 over budget. That net revenue will dwindle a little bit as we get through the last quarter of the year because we won't have very much revenue coming in. We have a few rentals scheduled, but we will continue to incur expenses mostly by way of repair and maintenance. Some utilities, some obviously maintaining the grounds, and then, as I said, trying to get us ready for next year. We're going to do some painting of offices, we hope, and some cleanup. But we still will be, we project to be well ahead of budget and well ahead of next year, so we should have a surplus. And so what we hope to do with that surplus is to put it aside and create a capital budget for next year so we can put some of that money back into the park.
Yeah, just for informational purposes, at the end of last year, there was a budget surplus, and it was determined by the commission that they would ask the city and the town of Rye each to put forward what had been expected to be a budget deficit. I believe each community had $50,000 set aside to make up for an operating deficit, and it was hoped that each community would then put that money, use that money to enhance our capital fund for the following year. So Debbie sent out notices as Secretary of the Park Commission to the City of Rye and to the Town of Rye to come forward with that money. And hopefully, well, I believe both entities will do so. So we should have a capital fund
Yeah.
going forward next year, that would be enhanced.
Right.
Not only by the operating surplus, but by capital expenditure, the capital transfer into, from operating to capital.
Right, and then we'll meet with Terry and the,
Yeah, we've already, as you know,
Right,
we've already
figure it out.
started the budget planning process for next year.
right, so we've already started the budget planning process for Wright Town Park, and then once we get a better sense of what we project the last quarter of the year, get a better sense of what the cash available will be to us, for us to put in the capital, then we'll meet with Terry and the department heads and decide how much of a capital budget we want and what do we want it for. And then obviously that'll be part of the budget that'll be brought to you. I think we've scheduled it for next month's meeting.
All right. Thank you.
Okay?
Can I ask a couple of questions?
Sure.
The interest expense, that's got to do with the debt that's assigned to Wright Town versus and Rice City, the interest expense?
We
Got to
actually
do
don't
with
even
with
have
the,
any
the
interest
bond?
costs here, for some reason. In the current year, I don't have any interest costs as an expense.
So how is the debt carried as far as that, the roof that was done a number of years ago?
Mac, that's the city and the town carried on their own books.
It's not on Wright Town
It's not
Park.
on the
There's
Wright Town
no
Park books.
liability.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
That answers one question. The second question is, at the August meeting, I know that the town was looking at hiring and did hire a computer consultant. I guess part of when Terry and you guys sit down, there may be some capital expenditures that
Yeah.
the town may be looking at as far as next year, as far as investments.
Right.
We already have a list from that IT vendor
Okay.
of things to be acquired for next year.
Right.
To significantly improve our technology base. And also, I would add that we're following up on your suggestion of pursuing voice over IP for the telephone system.
Well, again, I suggest, just because I'm on the commission at Rye Golf, and we go through a capital project list, and we ask the staff to prioritize it so the body can make a decision relative to limited funds, what the
Right.
priority is. I know
Yep, that's exactly what we're
whether
doing.
it's the ramp
Yeah.
or something like that, that you identify exactly what you feel comfortable in expending.
Right.
That's exactly the process that we hope to follow, Mac.
Would it be a better accounting principle practice, I should ask, if, since we're in current year, if we were able to amend the current budget to reflect some smaller capital items so that, since we know we're in the black,
Yeah.
so that if the commission agrees to amend this year's budget, the expenses that have been set aside by both communities can be more justified to
To spend the money this year and.
well, not to spend it, but to at least to move that money forward into, does the money have to be spent in order for it to be captured by the two municipalities, is the question.
No, because we can put it aside.
Okay.
That's the whole idea of the capital budget and the
Yeah.
capital
Okay, so
plan.
we don't
So
have to
could-
amend the current
Right, we don't have
year.
to amend it.
Okay.
The only way we'd have to amend it is if we incurred the cost this year. If we
Okay.
knew we were going to spend it, or something happened, and we had some emergency repair
Okay.
and maintenance that wasn't in the budget.
Okay.
Any other questions?
That's
Motion
it.
to adjourn?
Okay.
Can one last question, not under financials. I noticed down in pool parking lot at Playland that they're gonna start this sewer project.
Yes.
Is the town aware of the timeline associated with when they're gonna open up the body of Wright Town Park?
I believe that's going to be in the winter. I discussed that briefly with the consultant working for the county. The primary work is going to be in Rye City, Playland. We're looking at, after all of our activities, they'll be coming through the park. So it'll be,
It'll be done hopefully before March 1st in the park,
that's already in their plan, yes.
because I got equipment and they have a
Yeah.
pipe down there already.
They're going to be boring through there, so they're going to try to minimize the amount of open excavation. So they're replacing the sanitary sewer line.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
When will they enter the park?
I'm going to have the consultant give you a call, give you a schedule.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have a
Bill?
question, I think it's the same question that Debbie just asked, but as far as you say they're going to work on the Playland and sort of the north part of this project, because
Correct.
it does go down to the north bathrooms in the town park.
I gave him the route of the last race we have. Is it the MSG race?
Yeah, that'll be the last.
Yeah, I gave him
Oh, wait,
that
no, the
route.
turkey run will be the last one.
All right. But they're not, they said that they won't be through us until the latter part of December.
Oh, well, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
So I'm going to have Debbie get more information.
Good.
I take a motion to
Motion
adjourn?
to adjourn, please?
Second.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
We don't have a quorum to adjourn, so I guess
Get the
we have to
mics?
stay here.